Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Rich McCormick knows exactly how to handle Breonna Keeler, who again thinks that she has this conservative on the ropes, and he stands in there and reminds her what's really going on with healthcare. Let's dive in.
It's a really interesting poll because it shows a lot more people are blaming the president and congressional Republicans than Democrats. Yes, there are a lot of people who aren't really sure what to think at this point, but how are you seeing this?
Well, first of all, I've seen polls all over the place. It depends on how you poll. Literally, last night I was listening to another liberal media station that had it flipped upside down, and the guy who was being interviewed said, no, that's just the way we phrased it in the polling. Polling is not very accurate because the pollsters generally get out of it what they want. Depending on how you phrase the question is, you'll get exactly the question you're looking for, the answer that you're looking for.
And I hear you. You're just kind of like dismissing polls as if none of them mean, anything. But that's a Washington Post poll, and you might be dismissing it at your peril. So if we take a look at that and we take a look at Georgia, which obviously is of interest to you, among the 1.4 million ACA enrollees in Georgia who get these enhanced premium tax credits that are so popular with people, as we just showed, 500,000 Georgians could lose their insurance if tax credits expire. That's according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. They're pretty good with their numbers. You're talking about how expensive health insurance is. You see how much that matters to Americans. This is a real concern, and you're certainly aware of that.
Yeah, and it's funny. We have the most expensive healthcare system in the world. It's not even close. Anybody who's been overseas and been to an emergency room
address the
knows
subsidy, please. Can you address the subsidy
here.
Extension?
But no, I'm going to address that. But you got to allow me to address this. I'm a physician. I'm a healthcare expert on the doctor's caucus. But if you don't allow me to explain this, I can't educate the public, and we can't transform this conversation to a healthy topic rather than a partisan topic. So you have to let me explain if you want me to educate the people on what's at stake here. If we're going to reform our healthcare system, which we must, because right now it's unaffordable, we spend $5 trillion on healthcare per year. Biggest cost to the government, biggest cost to families, second biggest cost to businesses. And if we don't fix it, you're saying, oh, Americans love it if the government just takes over and spends more. Well, Americans also love it until we can't pay the debt anymore. And we're almost there, guys. When you start losing jobs, when you start seeing the government shut down repeatedly,
but how are you addressing it for the people who are going to see their premiums increase at the new year?
That's exactly my point. We need to revise the way we do healthcare altogether. We cannot.
Can you do it by January?
With government summation, when insurance companies, you're not letting me finish the explanation. When you have insurance companies making 230% more profit with 1/3 of all claims denied, that's the kind of fraudulent stuff that needs to be corrected. And that will pay for itself. You'll keep the premiums down when you address the waste, fraud, and abuse that's in the system. Not by just increasing the subsidies for governments on inefficiencies and fraudulent claims. That's not the answer, and that's what the Democrats are suggesting.
I don't think that many people would argue that they think the healthcare system works as they would like for it to work. But at this point, you have 500,000 people in your state who are looking at maybe losing their insurance because these premiums are going up at the new year. And the remedy that you're talking about is not going to fix that. But I do want to talk to you about something that your fellow veteran and your fellow colleague on the House Armed Services Committee, Jason Crow, said, because he said that this is a different kind of shutdown that Democrats are pushing here. And I mean, we've seen different shutdowns over the years, and voters normally don't like that. But he said that this one's different because the American healthcare system is at stake. And he also said it's different because this administration is taking unprecedented actions. What's your reaction to that?
Well, Jason's my workout buddy in the gym. I will say his pull-ups need a lot of form work, and he is Army, but I forgive him on that too. But Jason's a good dude. But I think he's misrepresenting what's at stake here. When you lose elections, as Obama said, there are consequences. We have so much fraudulent spending right now. We have so much wasteful spending right now. We have a bloated government we can't pay for. We're in 30% deficit spending per year. We have crime in cities that's unaddressed. Look, I don't agree with everything the president does. But quite frankly, when problems aren't addressed, somebody has to address it. This is where leadership comes in. The Democrats basically say we want status quo, even though they lost the election, they lost the House, they lost the Senate, they lost the presidency on the things they were running for, and now they want to pretend that those things were the right thing for the American people. They lost for a reason. They continue to cling to the wrong ideas.
They still don't understand that there are more complexities to these issues, and they don't understand that, hey, when you tried pushing for Obamacare back in late 2009, early 2010, and you basically kicked the can of all these problems down the road, you're now gambling that the American people are going to look at the mainstream media going, wait a minute, you have been telling us half-truths and lies for the better part of a decade and a half, almost 2 decades. We keep seeing this time and time again. Eventually, this can doesn't become a can anymore and becomes a full-blown grenade with the pin out and the release handle turned off. Eventually, it's going to go boom. So Rich McCormick is indeed a doctor, which gives him a better insight of the medical world. And ironically, we've served at similar hospitals because I used to deliver medical supplies all across of northern Georgia. But what I liked about what McCormick had to say here, what he had to say is that he started to unwork the problem. And I have already described part of it. The Democrat Party created the Obamacare mess. Republicans fought it tooth and nail, and once it finally passed, even without full Democrat support, remember, that was after the Democrat landslide, and thus Barack Obama wanted to pass something in his first 2 years before the Republicans really got an opportunity to change the game. And that's when the Tea Party truly became a huge movement because of the government overreach of our healthcare system. If you're 64 years or older, you probably want to listen to this one. The Department of Justice just went after 3 of the biggest Medicare providers, all for claiming that they were unbiased, while allegedly steering seniors into plans that provided them the best kickbacks. This just goes to show you can't trust any old Medicare provider to have your back. But navigating Medicare alone, that can be a total nightmare. That's why I want you to know about Chapter. They flip the script on the system by comparing every Medicare plan, not just the ones that give them the highest kickbacks. That's how they help people save, on average, $1,100 per year. If your plan's already the right fit, they'll tell you. And if there's a better plan out there, they'll help you switch. So if you're ready to fight against a rigged system, call Chapter today and get advice from people in your corner. Now Americans are reliant, at least a lot of Americans, in this case, the big numbers that we're talking about isn't the 1.4 million, it's the 500,000. 500,000 that might lose their coverage. The reality is, these people had designed programs that insurance companies were incentivized to do and to make even worse to some degree. And now we're here to collect. They're here to collect. It reminds me of the mortgage industry and the mortgage crisis back in the late 2000s, in 2007, 2008, where in the mid to late 90s, everyone was getting these magical deals on getting mortgages, and the moment they jacked up the prices, the thing came crashing down because people couldn't pay the mortgage payments. That's what's happening to some degree here in the medical field because of an artificial change, because our federal government said, we're going to do something nice. Well, now the debt has ballooned to, what was it? During the Bush years, started off at about 3 to 4 trillion. It's now 34 trillion. It has ballooned up in astronomical ways. And we can't get a full handle down on the problem because we don't want to address the spending issues to begin with. Ultimately, we hurt Americans through artificial fake plans, and then at the last second said, oh, by the way, these things are going away. Bye! That is all at the fate of the Democrat Party. You want to know how I know that? The two polls that CNN was bringing up about the Washington Post. The first poll had people blaming Trump and the Republicans at 47%. Notice when they're blaming the incumbent at a less than 50% clip in a poll. That means that everyone else has kind of realized it's probably not the president's fault, or else that would have been their default setting. After all, to quote Harry Truman, the buck stops here. That means that 30% were blaming the Democrats and another 23% weren't sure. And if they weren't sure that the incumbent is causing the problem, they're likely going to, for the vast majority of them, blame the Democrats. And that's been the name of the game for most of these shutdowns. Now, the interesting number is the next poll that they brought up, another Washington poll, where it was 71% liked these subsidies, whereas another 29% doesn't. Remember mentioning the squishy Republicans? That 29% would be about half of the Republican Party and the half of the independents that know that giving big government a whole lot more money to use as subsidies is not quite the best way to spend our tax dollars. That's not fair to the Americans because it's artificial. It's not fair to the businesses because it's fake. And then everyone gets used to the fakeness. And eventually, you've got to bring in something real, which they can't and won't, or that bubble's going to pop and everyone's going to get hurt because of it. This is why you don't do it to begin with. But because of Nancy Pelosi ramrodding the ACA, what was essentially Obamacare, down the throats of Congress and down the throats of the Senate, because that happened, the American people are now faced with a terrible, terrible option. Either fund these programs and worsen our debt and worsen our future, which is a bad idea when you have a population collapse incoming, might I add. We're not going to be able to afford this. We couldn't afford it then. We definitely can't now. And I know darn sure our future can't. This is an ugly thing to talk about, and I can talk about this here because I get a little bit longer time. I'm not going to be interrupted by Breonna Keeler. And McCormick can't spill the beans, or else people will get terrified and they'll lose support of both parties. So yeah, this is a very heavy and touchy subject, and it's got to be handled just right. And McCormick does the great job of pushing back in the right way. That's how you're supposed to handle this, particularly when you are getting someone as combative as Breonna Keeler. When they want someone who's going to be more of an attack dog on CNN, they'll sick Keeler on the smaller conservatives and see what happens. Well, no one won in this exchange. But that's why I'm here to tell the American people that the reality is the mainstream media ran point for Obamacare. The Democrats ran it down our throats in Congress and again in the Senate. And now the American people are paying the price, and it's going to blow up in both parties' faces now that this problem is here. Hopefully, Americans will realize who's at fault for this, and it's not the Republican Party or President Trump. But that's what I believe. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. My name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.